The restaurant was the kind of place you book a month out. White tablecloths, low lighting, waiters who glide instead of walk. 15 years. Crystal anniversary. I'd even let Sophia pick the wine. She looked good. That was the first thing. Black dress, simple, the kind that doesn't have to try. Hair pinned up in a way that said, I still care what this looks like from the outside. Ms. Carter, the maitre d' said, because that's who she was out here. Chief strategist for James Keller. The golden boy I'd been trying to nail for corruption for 2 years. Mrs. Ross, I corrected mildly. He smiled, but she didn't. We made it through the first course without incident. Small talk. Poll numbers. A Keller ad by she was proud of. I mentioned the Holloway case, the missing witness, Martin Ramirez. Her eyes flickered at his name. Quarter second, maybe less. The husband in me ignored it. The confessor wrote it down. The waiter came back with the champagne, the bottle tucked in a white sleeve. For your anniversary, he said. Sophia lifted her glass before he could pour. She didn't look at me. She looked just past my shoulder, where the tables were close enough to listen without having to lean in. To Daniel, she said, voice too bright. 15 years of pretending. 15 years of a husband who's been disgusting to me since our first night together. The word hit harder than any punch I've taken. Disgusting. The room went quiet in waves, like sound receding from an explosion. The waiter froze with the bottle midair, eyes wide. I smiled. That's the part people never understand. They think rage is loud. But real anger, the kind that decides things, that comes in cold. Careful, Sophia, I said, calm, even. Defamation's still a tort. A couple at the next table shifted. She laughed, sharp, almost hysterical. Oh, don't start with the law, Daniel. You've never cared how I felt. You only care what you can prove. There it was. A clean line. Emotion versus evidence. Her home field versus mine. In my head, a split screen opened. Left side. Husband. Staring at the woman he married. Wondering what the hell just broke that hadn't already been broken. Right side. Assistant District Attorney Daniel Ross. Reviewing the last 2 years like a timeline. Holloway corruption case. Keller's unexplained influx of consulting money. The missing witness, Ramirez. Sophia Carter Ross, architect of Keller's rise. I watched her hands. No tremor. Eyes a little too bright. Words too rehearsed to be spontaneous. This wasn't an outburst. This was a performance. Who's the audience? I asked myself. The husband thought, the restaurant. Humiliate him, punish him. The prosecutor thought. Someone told her something. Someone made her feel safe enough to burn this bridge in public. Tell you what, I said gently, as the waiter finally managed to pour, his hands shaking more than mine. We can talk about my failures later. Right now, you're making a scene. Her lip curled. Now you care how things look? I let that hang. I cataloged tone, timing, the sudden need to reframe me as a monster, just as Keller's numbers started to wobble under quiet investigation rumors. I thought of Ramirez vanishing right when we were ready to put Keller in a box. I thought of the war I'd been fighting in court. And I wondered, for the first time, if the real front line had been sitting across from me at our dinner table. We didn't order dessert. We didn't fight on the drive home either. The silence in the car felt like bright yellow tape around a body we hadn't uncovered yet. She stared out her window. I drove, replaying the scene in my head like surveillance footage. Angles, words, motive. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the hurt husband had said his piece. He was done. Under the porch light, keys in my hand, I turned to her. You want to rewrite history out there? That's your business, I said quietly. But listen to me, Sophia. She met my eyes, chin high, still ready for round 2. I don't know what you've done yet, I continued. I don't know who you think is going to protect you. But I'm telling you this as your husband and as the confessor. Politics won't save you from the law. For the first time all night, she looked afraid. Good, I thought. Now we're finally speaking the same language. 15 years earlier, the room had different banners but the same type of lie. A downtown hotel ballroom. Rented optimism hanging from every chandelier. Campaign buttons everywhere. Keller's opponent back then. the man who'd later back my rise in the DA's office. Cheap champagne in fancy flutes, interns trying to look like staffers, staffers trying to look like kingmakers. I was a year into being an ADA, coming off a good run of plea deals and one solid trial win. People had started using the nickname. The Confessor, right? She said, sliding in next to me at the bar like she owned the air. I turned. Brown hair in a loose twist. Red dress, not the reckless kind, calculated, just on the edge of inappropriate for a political event. Eyes that said she'd already figured out my salary, my ambition, and my weak spots. That's what they call me, I said. I don't use it. She smiled. Of course you don't. Men who like power never admit they like power. I studied her. And you are. Sophia Carter. I work for the man your boss hates. Politics. Opposite sides of the room. That should have been the first warning. You're the narrative girl, I said, remembering a briefing. Campaign strategy. Messaging. Spinning reality for the cameras. She tilted her head. And you're the one who thinks reality lives in evidence folders and sworn testimony. Tell me, Confessor, do you really believe juries care more about facts than stories? That's how it's supposed to work. That's not what I asked. There it was, the first duel. Under bad hotel lighting over cheap champagne. Facts first, I said. Story is what defense attorneys use when they don't have any. Or what prosecutors use when they want a plea, she countered. Don't pretend you don't frame things. She was right and we both knew it. I framed. She spun. We were just honest about different parts of the same game. The night moved fast. A slow orbit around each other. Crowded circles, tight smiles, stolen minutes back at the bar. She told me about her poli-sci degree, the campaign she'd cut her teeth on, the senator who'd said she had a killer instinct in a dress. I told her about law school, my first time questioning a hostile witness, the moment I knew I liked watching people crack when the truth closed in. You enjoy it, she said quietly, almost pleased. The moment they decide to tell you everything. It's my job. That's not a denial. We were married 11 months later. Small but polished wedding, nothing gaudy. The district attorney stood as my best man, hand on my shoulder like he was christening his successor. 3 sitting senators lined up on her side of the aisle, laughing with consultants and fundraisers who saw our union as a smart investment. A power couple, the papers called us. Justice and strategy. Law and narrative finally on the same team. That night, in a hotel suite that cost more than my car, I lay next to her in the dark, tracing patterns on her shoulder. The city hummed outside. The world felt simple for once. There's a moment in every case, I told her, when the truth locks together like gears. You can feel it. No more guessing. No more spin. Just click. She was quiet for a long time. You'd be terrifying as an enemy, she said finally. I laughed, kissed her hair, and thought it was a compliment. I didn't know she was filing it away like evidence of her own. The morning after the restaurant, I was at my desk by 6:30 a.m., suit jacket off, tie already loosened. I didn't sleep much. I didn't need to. Anger will carry you a long way if you point it in one direction. Linda Parker, my secretary, poked her head in with a travel mug. Rough night, boss. Productive, I said. I need everything we have on Keller's campaign finances, and full records on Sophia's firm, Meridian Strategies. All of it. Clients, subs, payments, donors. Her eyebrows went up. She didn't ask why. Linda's smart. Smart people don't touch live wires. Got it, she said. You want me to flag IT for any public records on? Yes, I said, and tell them I never asked. By 9, my office looked like a file room had exploded. Folders stacked in uneven towers, my screen split between spreadsheets and flowcharts. Keller's donor web sprawled across the whiteboard, a mess of arrows and LLC names designed to bore normal people into looking away. Buried in the middle of it, like it had always belonged there, sat Meridian Strategies. Sophia's company. Center hub. I drew a box around it. Then another line out to a smaller entity I hadn't seen before. Eastview Analytics. Registered under her mother's maiden name. Clean on the surface. No website, no branding, just a quiet shell nibbling at consulting fees. I followed the money. $1.7 million flowed from Keller's campaign into Eastview over 18 months. From Eastview, it was washed out in chunks to various vendors. One payment line made my stomach go cold. A modest but steady stream to an immigration law firm I knew by reputation. Good people. Aggressive on asylum cases. Recently, they've taken on one special client. Lucia Ramirez, daughter of my missing witness. I sat back, let the room tilt once. Then I leaned forward and kept going, because that's what you do when the picture starts to form. You press. On paper, it was clean. Keller hires Meridian. Meridian outsources analytics work to Eastview. Eastview pays a law firm. The law firm takes an interest in the immigration status of a vulnerable young woman whose father could destroy Keller from the stand. In my head, I replayed the anniversary dinner. Her timing. Her need to paint me as cruel in public, disgusting since night one. A man who'd never cared how she felt. If our marriage could be recast as a long-term abuse narrative, then any move I made from here on out would look like retaliation, not prosecution. Sophia wasn't just good at narrative. She was preemptively poisoning the well. Michael Reeves walked in without knocking, carrying 2 coffees and his usual assumption that I needed saving from myself. "Jesus, Dan," he said, taking in the walls. "Are you planning to sleep here?" He put a coffee down on my desk, then froze when he saw what was on the screen. "Meridian," he read. "Eastview. Ramirez. Is that?" "Yes." He studied the lines. "Tell me I'm reading this wrong." "You're not," I said. He set his jaw. "Are you investigating your own wife?" I looked at him. Husband to friend would have said no and thrown the files in a drawer. The prosecutor to the colleague said something else. "I'm investigating obstruction of justice," I replied. "Whoever's behind it." He stared at me for a long beat. "You need to recuse, Dan. Now, it's a conflict the size of Texas." I knew he was right. Professionally, ethically, politically, you don't chase your spouse through a paper trail and call it clean. But the thing about conflict of interest is simple. You have to step aside before you see too much. Before the gears lock. I already felt them starting to turn. "I'll loop in internal affairs," I said, "after I know exactly what this is." "Dan, I'm not going to court with half a picture and my head in the sand." I cut in. If Keller used my wife to make my witness disappear, I'm not turning that over to some junior who can't tell their ass from a balance sheet. He exhaled hard, ran a hand through his hair, and finally nodded. "You've got 48 hours. After that, I go over your head." "Understood." When he left, I closed my office door and locked it. I stared at the whiteboard, at the neat little arrow from Keller to Sophia to Eastview to Ramirez's daughter. The enemy might be sleeping in your bed, I thought. Then I corrected myself. Correction. The enemy slept in your bed. The rest is just paperwork. The next 48 hours stretched into weeks because that's what real work does. It ignores deadlines people set to feel in control. I built 2 walls. Wall 1, the official Keller file, the one the office knew about. Warrants, subpoenas, the usual slog through dirty money and cleaner excuses. Wall 2, my shadow board. Meridian. Eastview. Names I knew from our dining room, our Christmas card list, our wedding photos. Her people. Jordan Blake, Keller's campaign manager, came in first. The man sweated through $300 shirts even on good days. Today, his collar looked like he'd been bobbing for apples. I slid a folder across the table. Bank records. Emails. His signatures where they shouldn't be. 15 years, I said, tapping the sentencing guideline page. "Or you help me clean this up." He licked his lips. "I want a lawyer." "You'll get one," I said. "And if he's smart, he'll tell you what I'm telling you now. You were never the mastermind. You were the errand boy. You're not built for prison, Jordan. But Keller is. And so is the person who designed this." His eyes flinched at that last line. Not at Keller. Person. Sophia's silhouette floated behind his gaze like a ghost. "I want immunity," he whispered. "You want to walk out of here with both ankles unmonitored. You give me everything," I replied. "Every meeting, Every call. Every time my wife's name comes up. He signed. They all did, eventually. Her assistant. The one who used to text her reminders at midnight while we were in bed. She broke after I showed her her own emails scheduling Ramirez's daughter's first intake meeting. The accountant who built Eastview. He folded when I put a stack of Shell Corp registrations in front of him and asked if his kids liked their current school district. The private investigator who tracked Ramirez's movements. He tried to play tough until I laid out his unreported income and a quiet IRS referral. Then he talked for 3 straight hours. Each one flipped. Each one handed me another piece of a machine I'd lived next to for a decade and a half without seeing. At home, I kept my face neutral. Late nights on the Keller case. Cold dinners on the stove. Sophia in yoga pants, hair up, playing the sympathetic spouse whose husband was married to his work. "We'll get through this," she'd say, touching my arm, eyes full of practiced concern. "We will," I'd answer. In my head, I was already lining up her witnesses and wondering which one she'd call a traitor first. The call came at 4:17 a.m., the kind of hour where bad news usually means next of kin notifications. "This is Detective Alvarez, Pima County Sheriff's Department," the voice said. "I think I've got your ghost." "Name?" I asked, already sitting up. "Man's been going by Manuel Reyes, but his fingerprints say he's someone else." A pause. "Martin Ramirez." I was fully awake. Ramirez was tired of running. You could hear it under his words when I spoke to him an hour later from a conference room phone. Legal pad in front of me, coffee untouched. "My daughter," he said in halting English. "They promised her papers. School. Safety. If I don't testify, they keep helping. If I talk, they take it away." "Who's they, Martin?" I asked. "Give me a name, not a shadow." He hesitated. I let the silence work. I'd done this 1,000 times with mobsters and mid-level crooks. "A woman," he finally whispered. "White. Smart. She shows me the file. Says she can make problems go away. She knows everything about my daughter's case. Her name is Sophia." I wrote it down like I didn't already know the letters by heart. We cut the deal. Federal protection, relocation, his daughter's status handled by people who weren't on anyone's payroll but the government's. In exchange, full testimony. Keller, the campaign, the money, and the woman who'd walked into his fear with my last name. By 6 a.m., my war uniform was on: navy suit, white shirt, dark tie. No flair, just clean lines and purpose. Michael met me in the operations room, eyes red, stack of warrants in his hand. "Keller, Blake, 3 finance guys, 2 field operatives," he said, slapping folders on the table. Then he held back one, thinner, but heavier in every way that counts. "And this one, my wife." I slid it into my inside pocket, over my heart. Fitting. 20-plus officers and agents circled the briefing board. I walked them through entry points, arrest orders, and media management. My voice was steady because it had to be. "We hit Keller headquarters at 0700 sharp," I said. "No leaks, no heroics. Clean, controlled, by the book." At 7 a.m., we rolled up to Keller's building. He was mid-debate prep in a glass-walled conference room, script in hand, tie off. He saw us, went pale, and tried to smile for the cameras that were already gathering like vultures. "James Keller," I said, stepping in as uniforms fanned out. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, bribery, obstruction of justice." He didn't listen. They never do. They always think they can talk their way out of handcuffs. The cuffs clicked anyway. Reporters shouted questions. Keller's people scattered. One staffer, a kid with too much gel in his hair and a lanyard still around his neck, blurted out, "Sophia's not here. She called in sick, said she'd be logging in from the Regency." That word hit harder than the shouting. Regency. I left Keller to the agents, took Reeves with me, and drove like the clock was bleeding out. At the hotel, security footage showed her in grainy black and white. Baseball cap, sunglasses, dark jacket, a rolling suitcase. Calm. No rush. She walked out a side door an hour before we'd hit Keller's office. An hour. She'd been gone before I even tightened my tie. Jesus, Dan, Michael muttered. She knew. Of course she did. She'd spent 2 years building Keller's defensive narratives. She knew the rhythms of investigations, the cadence of leaks, the tells in my schedule I thought I hid. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Ross. Your timing's still a little off, Sophia's voice said. Smooth, amused. The visuals on Keller were good, though. Strong framing. You'll pull well off that footage. My grip tightened around the phone. You're under warrant, Sophia. This isn't one of your focus groups. Oh, I know, she said lightly. I read it. Federal language always suits you. You bribed my witness. You moved his daughter around like a chess piece. I kept her safe, she snapped, the mask slipping for half a second. Safer than your system ever would. There it was, the core difference laid bare. For her, the end justified the lie. For me, the lie poisoned the end. We'll find you, I said. No threat in my tone. Just a statement of fact. You might, she replied. But you won't get to write the story when you do. That's never been your gift, Daniel. The line clicked dead. We traced the call. Burner routed through enough relays to make it a scavenger hunt. As we started putting out quiet alerts to airports, train stations, and border points, I stood in the Regency security office staring at a frozen frame of her rolling that suitcase. I had tried to arrest my wife that morning. She'd arrested the narrative first. You don't chase a woman like Sophia the way you chase a normal fugitive. She understands cameras better than cops do. The first sighting came out of Vancouver. A hotel maid saw her on the news and swore she'd cleaned that woman's room 2 days earlier, found a campaign pin from an old race, a U.S. travel adapter, and a printout of a wire transfer. By the time local police got there, the room was wiped. Paid in cash. Fake name. No prints. Next was Mexico City. Market camera. Dyed hair, different cut, same posture. Head down but never hurried. She moved like someone who'd studied how fear looks and edited it out of her body language. Meanwhile, Keller went on trial. Ramirez testified. His voice shook, but the facts didn't. The money trail I'd built with my team landed like body blows. Shell companies, Eastview, Lucia's scholarship, the whole rotten chain. Keller folded under it. 12 years. His inner circle lined up for deals. Professionally, it was the win of my career. Headlines, op-eds, cable segments calling it a blueprint case. Personally, it felt like locking up a puppet after the puppeteer cut the strings and left town. 8 months after Sophia vanished, a package arrived at my office. No return name, postmarked from Buenos Aires. Inside, a flash drive and a note in her handwriting. For when you're ready to know the whole truth. I waited until past midnight, when the building was empty and the janitor had already given me that tired nod. I shut my door, killed the lights, and slid the drive into my computer like I was loading a gun. Her face filled the screen. Thinner, harder, same eyes. Hello, Daniel, she said. If you're watching this, Keller's done. Congratulations. You finally broke a piece off something you don't understand yet. She laid it out in that measured, surgical way she uses when she's building a story. Keller wasn't the top. He was proof of concept. There was a larger network, operatives, corporate money, foreign interests, testing how far they could bend elections and prosecutions before anyone like me noticed. You were always a Boy Scout, she said. That's why I loved you. That's also why I couldn't bring you in. You don't do gray. She promised more. Real evidence. Names. Accounts. Structures that made Keller look like a local distraction. I sat there staring at the frozen frame of her face after the video ended. Was it a confession? Or just another narrative? This time tailored for the one man she knew couldn't ignore a lead, even if it came from his fugitive wife. The second package came 3 days later, like she'd already accounted for how long it would take me to get past Pride and hit play on the first one. No note this time, just a thumb drive heavier than plastic should feel. I treated it like I would any other evidence. Chain of custody, even if I was the chain and the custodian. I scanned it on an air-gapped machine, watched folders bloom across the screen. Bank records, internal memos, offshore registrations, Audio files where men with expensive educations said incriminating things in casual tones. Keller wasn't a hub, he was a spoke. The wheel was bigger. Multi-state PACs. Consulting groups. Foreign money hooked in through shellcore with bland names. It was the architecture of rot. I spent weeks cross-checking names and dates against what we already had in sealed files, just to make sure this wasn't some elaborate fiction. It was held. Too clean, too specific to be fake. So I did what I'm paid to do. I walked the drive into a federal building, sat down across from 2 FBI agents in a room with bad paint and no windows, and set it on the table between us. Source? One of them asked. Confidential, I said. Credible. You'll verify it like you always do. They watched me like they knew there was more underneath. But they didn't push. The work swallowed them the way it had swallowed me. The investigation blew outward. Subpoenas, sealed warrants, quiet arrests in cities I'd only flown through before. My calendar is filled with closed-door briefings and NDAs thick enough to stop bullets. After someone torched a junior staffer's car in his driveway for talking, they assigned me a security detail. Daily sweeps of my house. Undercar mirrors. New locks. New routines. I'd come home to that 4-bedroom colonial and it felt like a museum of a life that never got built. No kids' shoes by the door. No second car in the garage. Just me, a security camera feed, and case files. Then the postcards started. No return address. No messages. Just a stamp and a picture. Rio de Janeiro, Christ the Redeemer over fog. Bangkok, floating market at dusk. Sydney, harbor at sunrise. Sophia's version of proof of life. No apologies. No explanations. Just curated scenery from places I'd only ever see in evidence photos. Michael saw one sticking out of my desk drawer once. She's screwing with you, he said. Keeping you in her orbit. She's staying alive, I answered. Both were true. I kept the postcards. Not in the fridge like a normal husband. In the same drawer as her active case file. 18 months after she disappeared. My office phone rang at 11:47 p.m. line 1. No caller ID. Daniel, she said. No hello. No preamble. Winslow Park. 30 minutes. Come alone. Protocol said. Notify my detail, call it in. Set up a perimeter. Curiosity, pride, and something uglier said. Just you and her. I split the difference. I texted my lead agent a vague message about needing air. Left my gun in the glove compartment so I couldn't pretend this was an arrest, and drove. Rain came in fine needles, blurring the park lights into halos. The place was mostly dark, swing sets slick, paths shining. I walked in with my hands visible, coat open, heart steady. She stepped out from behind an oak like she'd grown there. Thinner, sharper around the eyes. Same posture, same control. Hi, Daniel, she said, stopping 10 feet away. No attempt to close the distance. You look tired. You look wanted, I replied. She smiled without humor and held up a small USB drive between 2 fingers. Final piece. Offshore accounts. Names that make Keller look like a warm-up act. I didn't move. Why now? Because the people above Keller finally realized how useful you are, she said. They're trying to decide whether to own you or erase you. I prefer the third option. Which is? You stay you. You burn them down. I'm gone. I stepped forward, took the drive. Her hand didn't shake. Was any of it real? I asked. The marriage. Her eyes finally softened. Just once. It was the only real thing I've ever had. That's why I left. You can't live where I live and stay clean. Headlights washed the trees. Black sedan easing into the lot. 2 men in suits got out, scanning. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. 1 text. Run now. Her eyes flicked past my shoulder. Showtime, she murmured. The first shot cracked bark off the tree behind me. Instinct took over. I hit the wet path running. Drive clenched in my fist. Lungs burning. Feet slipping. Behind me, more shots. Shouting. A woman's voice once. Sharp. Commanding. Then swallowed by the rain. I didn't look back. Prosecutor runs toward danger in court. Out here, with real bullets and no badge to hide behind, You run toward the one thing that still matters. Evidence. The drive from the park did what it was supposed to do. Names. Accounts. Offshore trails so arrogant they didn't bother to hide behind clever acronyms. It slotted into what the Bureau already had and turned a corruption case into a structural failure. 3 sitting senators. 1 federal judge. Lobbyists who'd built careers on never being in the room where anything technically happened. One by one, they walked in through back doors and holding garages, faces set in that same tight expression I'd seen on 100 defendants who thought they were too important to fall. I handed the park drive over in another windowless room, watched the agents handle it like a live grenade. Source? They asked again. Same as last time, I said. Still confidential. Still right. A closed congressional committee called me in next. Oath mic, nameplate. Cameras banned, but you could feel the hunger around the table. Mr. Ross, how did you first become aware of this broader network? One asked. Through inconsistencies in the Keller investigation, I said, every word chosen like a piece of evidence. Patterns that didn't match a local scheme. What about your source? Protected, I answered, and irrelevant to the validity of the material. They pushed. I didn't budge. I'd spent my career forcing confessions out of people. This time I kept one. 2 weeks later, the bodies of the 2 men from the park turned up in a burned-out car outside Baltimore. No IDs, no fingerprints worth a damn. Message received. The game cleans up after itself. My life settled into a new kind of normal. Permanent security protocols. Cars checked twice. House swept on a schedule. In court, they called me the man who never loses. At home, the silence could have been another defendant waiting for arraignment. 6 months after the park, the last package came. Plain envelope. My name. No return. Inside, divorce papers already signed on her side, and a short note in her handwriting. You deserve to move on. This is the only clean thing I can give you. No apology. No explanation. Just one final act of clarity. I signed. Not because I was ready. I wasn't. I signed because it was the only honest move left in a story built on lies and necessary angles. People still call me the confessor. They think it's about getting bad men to talk. They don't understand the irony, that the most important confession I ever heard didn't come in an interrogation room. It came from my wife, standing in the wreckage of our life, telling me without spin that love doesn't erase consequences. Some things stay black and white, especially for the people we let closest to us.
Subscribe and stay one step ahead of cheaters. And trust me, the next story makes this one look like a fairy tale.